Hey, welcome to the Black Knight Nation podcast. I'm your host, Sal Interdonato. The Black Knight Nation podcast is brought to you by Higher Echelon, as always, run by Joe Ross, former Army fullback, former Army assistant coach, and former Army officer. We thank Higher Echelon for always sponsoring the podcast. Check out our YouTube channel. We have past podcasts on. We have all kinds of recaps and former players. A couple of Kam Holloway's teammates, actually, have been on the podcast before, and we welcome former Army offensive lineman Kam Holloway to the Black Knight Nation podcast. Kam, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Of course, I appreciate it. When you hit me up, I was like, "Oh yeah, it's like a blast from the past." I would love to do that. So I'm always down to talk about some Army football, man. Let's do it.
Actually, yeah, absolutely. And first we want to talk a little bit about you. Then we're going to talk about your Army football career, and now what you're doing. Outside of you serving in the Army, man.
Yeah.
We were talking about this before. Just the time that you played at Army was such a fulfilling. I mean, if you want to be a college football player, you want to play service academy football. You play in the years between 2018 and 2021, right?
Yes, sir.
I mean, I can your freshman year, it's the Oklahoma game, and what the 11-win season.
Yep. 11 win season.
The
Yes,
11
sir.
win season, crazy times there. Then 2019, it's a close call at Michigan. 2020 is the COVID year. You go to the bowl game. 2021 is another bowl game, a win over Missouri with the late kick, 9-win season. I think 35 wins your class had.
I think something around there. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe you could just tell us what it was like. We'll get to how you got to West Point, but first, maybe tell us a little bit about what it was like to be playing in those years. Because before last year, that 11-win team was the most wins in Academy history, and
Yeah.
that was a team that will be remembered. Really kind of the 2016 started it, the 2018 team continued it, and it was just I remember it's great times covering Army football.
Yeah. Coming in, especially right when they broke the streak, that was just like a spectacle to watch. And I remember being a high school recruit at the time, watching the game because I didn't really know much about Army Navy besides playing NCAA, and I knew they always ran the triple option. But when
Yeah.
I was actually being recruited by, and then I watched that game, I was like, wow, that'd be something that's really cool to do. And they always talk about how it's not about the football game. It's these guys will give their life for this country, and it's a real thing. And so just seeing that, and then stepping into an era where we were competing. I think it was just phenomenal. First off, shouts out to Coach Monken. I mean, he's done a phenomenal job with the program. Second winningest coach in Army football history, and just being able to play under him and the leadership. It wasn't always fun times. Obviously, it's college football, and he coaches hard. But being able to be there through that period, like you said, my freshman season, we win 11 games. We almost beat Oklahoma on the road, losing overtime to Kyler Murray when he had his Heisman Trophy run. And then we waxed the floor with Houston. I think we set a bowl game record at the time. It was like 70-14. It was awesome. It was like a great intro to college football. Then we fall off the second year where I think we had a really good team. Just sometimes it's kind of hard to piece it together, but we kind of fall off, lose to Michigan in that double overtime game at the Big House, and I think kind of there was really where we kind of start to fall off a little bit. But it happens. Then to rebound the next year, and COVID hits. The entire world stops. We were on spring break, and I remember when they texted us, they emailed us, "Yeah, don't come back." COVID, so we went home, and then it just ended up being way larger than what we ever could have imagined.
Yeah.
And I think we were actually like the first team in the country to come back. We actually came back to West Point on my birthday. I remember getting a COVID test stuck up my nose while they were singing "Happy Birthday." It was horrible. But to endure everything we did through that season, I think we're probably one of the only teams that played a full schedule of games, which was really, really cool. When everything was locked down, we were still able to get out and, serve the school and promote our school by playing football. It was really awesome. And then senior year, just the culmination of, because I also went to prep school, so the culmination of 5 years playing football and getting to know guys that I had no idea who they were, and then getting there and they were becoming some of my best friends, my brothers for life, that I'm in their weddings. I just came from a wedding for a buddy of mine, Zach Ward.
Hmm.
You know, it's just crazy how the time flies so fast and how close you get, and to be able to end the season the way that we did after coming off of a tough Navy loss and a rebound and beat a SEC school, Missouri, on a walk-off field goal at that. It was just it's something that you really write movies about, I would say. Like, I was just talking to a classmate of mine about that. I did a podcast for him the other day, and he was asking me about one of my favorite memories of Army football, and I was like, well, it was actually that Missouri game, because even though they were a 6-6 football team, that's still the SEC. They were really,
Mhm.
really good, a very talented team, and it took everything that we had to beat them, and to walk them off on the field goal. It's like, that's a storybook ending. So it was really awesome. I really enjoyed my time.
Yeah, you couldn't have wrote it better. I mean, you were on teams that won commander in chief trophies, right? I mean, I don't know that 2020 year where you're closing the year with Navy and Air Force at home, never will happen again,
Never.
and you beat them both back to back wins to claim the Commander in Chief's trophy. I mean, those are man, those are memories. And I look at like the captains from that year. I think I know Sandon McCoy was a captain from
Mhm.
that season. We've had Sandon on the podcast. We had Cole Talley on the podcast talk about the Missouri kick, and
Yeah.
it's just good. I mean, when you hear a more recent good times for Army football, a year like this year where you're coming off a 12-0 season. They're 3-4 right now. The games, three of the losses are one score games where you're right in there. If a play here or play there, you could easily be twisted around to be 6-1. Who knows? But it's good to hear like the more recent memories, because we can get Army football players on from the past, and you hear those stories about what it was like. You lived through that. You
Yeah.
lived through all these memories and the crazy COVID year. And I think about that, and I didn't even get a chance to go to a game. I don't think that year, probably the only year I didn't get a chance to go to a game in the last like 15 to 20 years, at Mikey Stadium. And it's just wow. I mean, what you said that like the winning, and now I think about, you're right. You're at I guess your senior year is 26. What, you graduate high school in 2016 or now?
Uh, so I guess like I graduated high school in May of 2017.
So that
So
2016 year is kind of, you see what what the winning starts there. It's a pretty special year with, like you said, the Streak Buster. What do you remember about your recruiting with Army? Like, what do you remember? Do you remember like a Coach Viti coming around, or what do you remember about that?
I remember Kevin Corliss. He was my recruiting coordinator. Love him to death. I just remember they were super, super consistent. I think Coach Corliss would call me. Well, so the first time he ever called me, he has a real raspy voice, like, "Hey, this is Kevin Corliss." And so when he calls me, I knew I was being recruited at the time. So my coach had told me, "Hey, keep your phone on. Make sure you're always answering random numbers." And I don't
Mhm,
answer random numbers. So when I saw him call, I think he had a Missouri number, I believe. And so when I
mhm.
answered, I was just like, "Hello," and he was like, "Yeah, this is Kevin Corliss with the Army." And I stopped him. I was like, "Hey, I appreciate what you guys do, but I'm about to go play college football. I'm not looking to get into the service or anything. Like, thank you for calling, but take me off the call list." He's like, "No, no, 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 no. I'm talking about West Point Army football." I was like, "Oh." And the guys in the video, he was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And so, he told me about it, and I was sitting in the living room with my dad at the time, and my dad was like, "Who you talking to?" And I was like, "West Point?" Question mark. And he was like, "Oh," his eyes lit up. He knew who they were, but I was like, I don't really know too much about it. But I just remember Coach Corliss being so consistent, more than any other school that I had talked to, because I talked to a decent amount of schools, but they were always so consistent. He was so consistent. He would send me text messages all the time, and I knew it was either Tuesday or Wednesday around 6:30 or 7. If my phone rang, I knew it was Coach Corliss. I didn't even have to think about it. And I looked up like, oh, 6:30, right on cue. Yep, Coach Corliss was going on. And he would call me every single week. And I think that's what I admired the most about Army at the time, and Coach Corliss, was just how relentless, and how much they pursue me. And it made me it always feels good to feel wanted.
Yeah.
And so I was very taken aback by that. And I truly love that. So when I did get recruited by some of the other academies, they didn't recruit me the same way. And I was like, yeah, I think I know where I need to be, and I'm not going to do anything to jeopardize my relationship with that. So I'm going to stay on this path that I am with West Point, and I'm so glad that I did. If I had to do it 10 times over again, I would.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what other schools were looking at you when you say the service academies might have been. Did you have offers from Navy or Air Force or no?
So I didn't necessarily have offers from them.
Mm,
I know Air Force was, I think it's some T Cross or something like that was the defensive line coach. I think he was the one that was recruiting me at Air Force, and we would talk, but I was never able to get the offer. And I remember
mm,
right before signing day, a coach from Navy had called me, and he had. I knew I didn't have the offer at the time, but I knew when I went up there that I would get the offer. He wanted me to come up on the official visit, and at the time I said yeah, and then like 30 minutes had went by and I sat back and think about it. I was like, these guys are calling me 2 weeks before signing day. They already know I'm committed. You could have recruited me way back then if you really wanted me, but now it's like you're trying to poach, the talent from Army. And so I remember I sat down for 30 minutes and I called them back in like an hour and I was like, you know what, coach? I'm actually good. I don't even want to come on the visit. Like I'm pretty locked into West Point
mm.
and I think I'm going where I need to be. And so we chopped it up after that. He was like, good luck to me. And I mean, I think I did all right. We beat them twice. Well, I beat them 3 times, once at prep school, then twice through
Yeah.
my time there. So I'll take those odds. Wish it was 4 in a row, but it happens.
Yeah, no doubt, and I know that happens a lot during the recruiting, especially when they had the only one signing day, right?
Yeah,
Where that last week, our Army coaches are probably making phone calls to recruits to make sure they still have them
thousand
because the
percent.
letter of intents are not
It's
binding
not
in
a.
service academies. So you
Yep.
can, if you decide, hey man, Air Force guy called me, he says I'm going to be able to play right away, or he's trying to, hey, I want to play this specific position. He says, hey, we have an opening at that position.
Yeah.
You might be swayed a little bit, but it's great to hear that you weren't. And I mean, I'm sure it works with Army coaches too. They might hear, hey, this Air Force commits maybe not 100% right now, and they might try too. It's just so competitive, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we're going to talk about the Commander in Chief's a trophy and what that means to you, and maybe what that means. Maybe get your insights of the rivalry in a little bit, but I mean it starts with recruiting in the rivalry, the CIC, right? I mean, they're
Yeah.
going after it. 365 days they're recruiting against each other, the three academies.
Yeah.
And I'm go ahead. I don't know if you want to give a little
Yeah.
insight on that.
Yeah. I think first off, I know that I've always thought that the Air Force Academy was very, very talented. I think they do a phenomenal job recruiting, as well as the Naval Academy. But to be able to coach at an academy school and to be able to get recruits to want to come up there and play football, I mean, I think they have to be some of the best recruiters in the nation because how do you spin that to a kid that wants
Hmm.
to go play for? And I'm not saying we won't play for a national championship because now with the CFP playoffs, everything is totally different.
Yeah,
NIL doesn't really affect us the way that it does the other schools, but I feel like the playing field is way more open and it's a lot more level. So a lot of schools are going to get an opportunity to at least make the playoffs, and you never know. Once you're in, and then all it takes is any given Saturday or wherever the game is played, you can make it to that level. But I just think they're so awesome at recruiting because it is so hard to spin that to a kid 16, 17-year-old. Yeah, I want you to come play football and you're also going to have to serve. Once
hmm.
football is over, you might not. I know you have hopes of going to the NFL. You might not go, but you will end up serving as an officer in the military. So
Yeah,
I think they do a phenomenal job of recruiting and spinning it in a way that not only embodies leadership, growing as a man, um, teamwork, but also still going to play a very high level of football and we're going to win. So I've always
yeah.
admired that about the coaches from all the academies. And then just getting into actually playing in those games and like the buildup of it, you don't really notice it and realize it until you're in it. You know, like I can say I I respect Navy more than Air Force. I really don't care for the Air Force Academy at all. Like
Yeah.
if there's any team in the country, I don't care for the Air Force Academy. I feel like I don't know. And I'm sure you can ask anybody that's played. It's just something different with Air Force that they just rub me the wrong way. So it's
There's
a
arrogance, right? There's a little arrogance there.
yeah, it's a lot of arrogance, and they say some crazy stuff to you. I know Coach VD gets really, really heated about it. I always would love Air Force Week because he would come up and give a speech that just made you want to run through a brick wall. And I'll spare the details because he was saying some pretty intense stuff, but it got you ready, especially to ramp up that week because you're going hard. Obviously you're doing it all off season, 365 days a year. We have clocks that count this stuff down, but
Yeah.
um, I don't even think I would really count the Air Force as a rivalry because to me, I think I've only lost the Air Force one time, so we're not really worried about them. But Navy, that one, that one is just it's just so much that leads up into it, and even if you go undefeated, to lose to Navy, it's just like it almost feels like you just lost your season. And I know that happened last season. You know, we had a phenomenal year. We
Yeah.
win the American conference, and then we lose to Navy, and it's just like feels like almost a waste of a season. And I don't know why that game gets to us so much. It's just so much that it's everything you work for, and it's just the embodiment of the academy. I mean, hell, it's in our alma mater. The last thing you say is "Be Navy." So
Yeah.
when it's built up like that, it really does, it really can, determine how you feel after the game. But just a phenomenal experience, and it's just something that I wish everybody could get to experience because I feel like there's no other rivalry in the country like the Army Navy game.
Yeah, I can't imagine. When you get to sing second in the Army Navy game is a little bit different when you're singing second against the Air Force. Like
Yeah.
say maybe Air Force, it's kind of not expected, but I think it's like 6 out of the 8, maybe the last 8. It could be over Air Force if I'm pulling that number out of the sky. I think I got it.
Yeah, I think it's something around there. Yeah.
Yeah, and too. I remember. I don't know if you were a part of this, but I remember it was a home game at Mikey Stadium, so it had to be was it 18 or 19, but the warm-ups, and they were lining up for team warm-ups, and they were lining up. Normally you would stay on one side, your side, and not the others, and they're warming up on the full field. Why Army's kicking, why Army's doing their kind of warm-ups, and it was just like, I don't know, I guess they were trying to make a point, but I
Yeah,
mean, whatever.
I think that was my first. Yeah, see, that's the thing about Air Force. They just do weird stuff, and it's like
Yeah.
I don't understand it. I think that game also, it was definitely my freshman. I think it was the Air Force game my freshman year because we were wearing all black.
Mm,
It was a very tightly contested game, and I remember we won on like a fourth down.
mm.
I think it was like 4th and 1. We go for it, and I remember Bryce Holland just turning around to the sideline like putting this. It was like a super
Oh yeah,
iconic
yeah,
memory in my head. He's just walking off with his hands up like this. And I think a fight actually broke out at the end of that game because they were so upset that they lost. But it's just this the whole program, Coach Calhoun. I don't know. It just got
yeah.
something weird going on over there, and it's like and crazy enough. Air Force, to me, like I said, they are very talented. I think they're probably the most talented academy out of all three of us, but they just can't seem to. I don't know what it is. They just can't seem to get over the hump sometimes. So
Yeah,
it
I
is
think
what it
their
is.
excuse might be like, "Hey, we do that for all of our games. Like when we're playing Colorado State or Boise State,
Yeah,
we do that for all of our games." Well, it's not that Army Air Force game. It involves a Commander in Chief's trophy, so it's a little different. It's a little different. So talk to us a little bit about kind of your career at Army and how like freshman year, what's it like for you? Are you working and are you working your way up through the depth chart? Tell us a little bit. You played at the prep school, so you got a taste of that. Talk to us a little bit about what plebe year was like for you on the football field, and then maybe at the academy.
yeah. So it was very interesting. So obviously played at the prep school, so I kind of had like a good foundation of what the offense was, and so getting into my freshman year at the academy, I was super excited to play, and I think I was playing some really good football. Um, I was third string on the depth chart behind two seniors. Austin Shuford and Jeff, I think, were the two that I was behind. So even though I wasn't playing, I was still getting practice rep with the with the
Yeah.
with the with the with the playing team. And so I was in that second huddle, and it was just really fun the entire season to play like that. And I kind of knew like my role. I knew I would get a chance to play just a little bit later in my career, but the time I was like, you know what? I'm okay with this. I'm behind two seniors. They're really good, and I'm learning a lot. And so I think for me, when I tore my ACL my freshman year,
Oh,
right before we played Colgate, maybe.
okay.
And it was a game that I think I was going to play in, and so that was just like
Mm,
to me that was just like a shot to the stomach because it was like the last minute before the last period of practice, and then like that was the week we just had like a quick walkthrough practice on Thursday, and then Friday was travel. So I was like, I was essentially at the end of the week, and to
mm.
tear my ACL in the last period of practice, it was just like it was gut wrenching, and so for me that just kind of like it just set me back so much, and I ended up not doing well in school, becoming academically ineligible, and not being able to even be there for my team my second year at West Point, and then I still think about that a lot. We had such a drop off from the first year, and I was like, well, maybe if I would have, you know, no, never tore my ACL, or maybe if I would have been hitting the books a little bit harder, maybe I could have helped us. Maybe I could have helped us a lot more my sophomore year. So it went the way it was supposed to, but I think it was a great lesson for me because it really showed for me, well, what happens when you actually hit some type of adversity?
Yeah.
Because I've never really had any type of adversity like that before in my life. I've never had any major injury where I was like, okay, wow, I actually can't play football. So I did a lot of thinking, a lot of time in the training room, just rehabbing. So it took a lot, but I think I'm grateful for the experience because it's kind of made me to the person that I am today. And so from there, now getting ready for the spring, here comes COVID. We don't
Mm,
have spring anymore, and so now back for me, it's like, okay, well, I'm still nursing my knee. I'm trying to get back into the swing of things, but it's like I haven't played any real football in almost a year and a half.
yeah.
It was a while, and so spring is so pivotal because those are the extra reps that you're not getting. And though I was working out at home, it's nothing like hitting in real life. It's nothing like actually being there physically practicing. And so I had, for me, it was hard getting into my junior year. So coming to fall camp, I was actually starting on the depth chart. I was the starting right tackle, I believe, in camp. And, just the expectations that not only I had for myself, but that I think that the coaches had for me, it was that kind of sucked because I wasn't performing like I knew I could because my mind and my body just were on two different places. I was still trying to get in sync. And so I ended up sliding through the depth chart and I would play, but it wasn't much. It was kind of like garbage minutes. We were beating the brakes off of teams and I would get in and play. But, halfway through that season, it's like I woke up one day and like it just clicked in practice and like my mind and my body got on the same page. And that's for me when I kind of started to turn everything around. And that's when I started to play more games and play in games, actual meaningful minutes in games. All the way through my senior year, we just started rotating in and out. And so definitely from my halfway through my junior year through the rest of my senior year, that was the time of my life because I was actually playing football and I was playing good football. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was a great experience though. Like I said, I wouldn't change it or trade it for the world because it taught me so much about life and about myself and
Yeah.
about perseverance and what type of man you want to be. So I'm glad I went through those hardships.
Not everything's going to work out 100% perfect,
Not at
right?
all.
Especially at West Point, you're going to be throwing some curveballs, you're going to be throwing some hurdles, and it says a lot that you work your way through both the physical injuries and getting through the academic side because that's not easy, and
Not at all.
just to you finish strong and you finish kind of like you said, you finished with that Missouri win, and you finished on you can walk away off your college football career and said you left it all out on the field, and
1,000%.
and the way you did it to end your career right with the win over Missouri. Um, Wanted to talk to you a little bit about what it was like to be a part of the offensive line room at West Point, the mob. I know when Brent Davis was there, and he was probably your offensive line coach.
Mhm.
He developed the mob mentality, and it's just still lives today. They still
Yeah.
call themselves the mob. Brady Small, Paulo Generale, those guys, Will Jeffcoat, and the crew. Just wondering what it was like, being in that room because, like you say, Bryce Holland, a guy who we had on this podcast. I mean, perhaps the best center that Army's ever had.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we can go back until the college football Hall of Famers of the 40s. But I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that here. Bryce. Anytime I see Bryce, it's great to see him, and he was just on the field. He gave it everything he had, and he was he's a fifth year guy, but I mean, man, he was really great, and more than just on the field, off the field, right? I mean, just a leader off the field too. I bet for you guys, what was that like to be, kind of when you're a freshman walking into that room, and when you're a freshman, that's a pretty good team. That's a pretty darn good offensive line, like you said. I mean, Brett Totu, I believe, was a year before you, maybe.
Yeah.
He's starting center for the Eagles today.
Mhm.
I mean, so that was quite a room the Army had, and you were starting off in it.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Really coming into it, it's just like I said, going back from in high school and watching those games, they were just so good, tough, physical. I mean, they did a well gelled offensive line, and I think, we run the ball so much. We're a triple option team. So anytime that we're not having the best season, me as an offensive lineman and me and my buddies in the mob, like we always say, well, it's on the offensive line. Like the offensive line is the heart and soul. Me personally, is the heart and soul of every Army
Yeah.
football team. It's like we make or break seasons, and so coming into that locker room, especially with a guy like Bryce, who is just a phenomenal person. I mean, a phenomenal person. Who's a phenomenal football player, phenomenal leader, and he was just the embodiment of what you want not only a team captain to be, but an Army officer. Like that to me, like when I think of who is a huge role model to me, it was always Bryce. And so
Hmm.
just having a figure like that in the locker room was almost like you looked up to him so much because you're like, okay, he's showing you the ropes, he's showing and laying the foundations. Like once I'm gone, I'm passing you guys the torch. We were just freshmen at the time. It was like, hey, the torch goes to everybody. And throughout the years, you have to keep it going. And so you look at guys like Bryce, you look at guys like Brett. Brett was a he was a grad assistant when I was
Yeah.
a freshman. So getting to know him and his mentality, it was just something that was awesome to be a part of. And the mob, malicious offensive line brotherhood. I mean, it really is a brotherhood. Not everybody makes it, but the ones that do, you form a bond that is just unbreakable. Even if you don't talk to each other every day, I could go see some of my buddies that I play with, and it's like we never missed a beat. We can talk like we've been in just with each other yesterday. It's amazing. The hardest working group on the field at all times. I think uh, Brent Davis did a lot of good for us. Just building the mentality that we had and the bond that we had. It was just something that was very, very impressive and something that I always cherish. Sangwa Tuateli, he's actually here at Arizona State right now. I talk to him often.
Very cool.
He was there my junior and senior year. Just he wanted to come back because he had been there before. He just wanted to help cultivate our offensive line and make us even better. So it was just something that was super awesome to be a part of. And I love watching the offensive line now, going to games and talking to the younger guys. Brady Smalls, who as good as Bryce is, I think Brady has a chance to be probably maybe better than Brady. I think Brady Small is a phenomenal center. And I think he has a chance to be even better than Bryce is. Just watching him play, and even talking to him on Instagram or in person, it's always a joy just to hear from him, and his mentality. And I'm always sending him, good luck tonight, or you played a hell of a game tonight, kid. Like it's just an awesome kid. And just seeing, you know, how Bryce and the guys gave it to us, and then how we cultivated it, and I think maybe elevated it, and then seeing where Brady and the guys are now, and some of the younger guys that I played with, where they taking it to. It's just phenomenal to see, and I'm just so proud to be a part of that.
You look at like last year, they were the Joe Moore Award winning, the best offensive line in the country, and like Connor Finucane was on that team. I'm sure he was
That's
your teammate,
stud.
right? Was he on your?
Connor Finucane is an absolute stud. Smart kid,
Oh yeah,
respectful kid, but I mean, him on the football field and him off the football field, two different people. When you see him, just like, oh, he's a super nice kid, but then on the football field, he's a freaking maniac.
yeah.
He is also one of the best football players I think I've played with. Physical, smart. I mean, very, very talented guy.
He was a true freshman his freshman year, and I think he started the game. He was in the mix on the offensive line in 2021 when you
Yeah,
guys had that good season. I mean, and then last year he was a fifth year guy, but I mean he kind of held that together. And you look at, like we said, Brett Toth is in the NFL. Lucas Scott is in the NFL, who played tackle
yeah.
for Army last year, who's now a
And he
tight end.
started. So I think Lucas, he started as a defensive lineman. I don't remember if he was a I don't know if he was
Yeah,
a
he was
freshman when I was
recruited
a
as a
junior.
fullback. He was
Yeah.
recruited as a fullback, which is
And
crazy.
I think his story is amazing because, it sometimes you get to college, it might not always click, at whatever position they recruited you at. But like I remember the guy recruited as a fullback, then they moved him to the defensive line, and it didn't really work out for him at the defensive line. He's always been a good football player, but it didn't
Yeah,
necessarily work out for him at the defensive line. And then they always say, the last stop is the offensive line. So anytime people are on the cusp of getting cut, they move them to the offensive line. And so when I saw like how well he was playing, I was just so excited for him because it's like that's very mentally taxing on the kids who knows they're a good football player, but it's hard trying to find the fit
yeah,
in college. Hey, moving the offensive line, he actually just flourished there. And now he's in the NFL. So
yeah.
super, super proud of him. He's a really good football player.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, he was another guy straight out of high school. I mean, I saw him win. I saw him in state wrestling finals in New York, in the state of New York. So I mean, he was
Yeah.
just a great athlete, and it's great to see him make. And now he's a fullback in the NFL. He's back to
Yeah.
his old
Back to his
position.
original position. Yep.
So that's crazy. Do you have any? I know you mentioned a ton. I know you have, the Missouri win as maybe your top memory. Are there any other memories that come to mind for you as an Army football player that you would like to share, or just like, off the top of your head say, man, that was a really good time, a good thing, or maybe it was a tough thing that you guys had to battle through during your career.
Yeah. So I was like every game my freshman year was just awesome. I remember because I didn't travel my freshman year. I will travel to the home games, but not the away games.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember we almost caved the floor in the A room when we were playing Oklahoma just because we were going back and forth. And that game was a pay-per-view game, so
Oh, yeah.
a lot of people didn't really get to watch it. But that was one of my fondest memories, even though we didn't win that game, just seeing the way we went out there and competed. Watching the Houston game, being in the stands for that game, that was awesome. I was still nursing my ACL, but just seeing it was just an amazing moment to watch that one. But yeah, the Missouri game is number one, and I think if I had to pick a number two, probably also be my senior year when we beat Air Force
Hmm.
in Dallas. Or yeah, we're in Dallas. A game
Yeah.
we actually should have lost. I think Air Force outplayed us in every phase of that game. But sometimes you just get lucky and the ball happens to bounce your way, which it did. Booby Law ended up
Oh,
getting
yeah.
the fumble recovery in the end zone. I think we were in overtime already, or that either that was the overtime score to win it, or that took us to overtime. But I remember
Yeah.
him doing that, and it was great because I had my entire family there. So just being able to win that game, and then Jabari Moore with the game winning pass deflection to walk it off. That was a really awesome moment. So those are probably one and two. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not even honestly going through your 4 years, Cam. That's not even one I remember it, but I'm like, now that you talk about it, I'm like, another great one. I'm just
Yeah,
about
we
just
had a lot of great games. It's really hard to pick when you think about it because we've had so many. It's like wow, I can't believe we pulled that off.
yeah,
I mean, it's so many great games, but those for me, I guess because it was the fashion that we won it in. It was like because it was such a close game. It was like
yeah.
it's a game that could have went either way. So I think that's probably why I would have them ranked so high.
I like to ask this on the podcast. Who you think the best player that you went up against was in college, or were you were on the same, like this, that was your opponent and you shared the same field with? Do you have it?
Ooh,
Is there a player that pops into your mind?
there's a few. So from our team personally, it was just a it was just an honor to play with a lot of them. But I think Jimmy Hammersticks, James Nautigal, I think he might be the best linebacker to ever come out. Me personally, I think he's the best linebacker that I've ever seen come out of West Point. I remember watching the Houston game. He had a phenomenal game. He was
That,
really,
that
really good.
and that's saying a lot when you have linebackers that are in the NFL right now that played Army
Yeah.
football. So
And Cole is a guy. Cole is a guy. John Radigan is a guy. My buddy Eric Smith was a guy. We had I could call Army linebacker you like even the two guys that are there now are the young ones. They are really really good at football. But I just think Jimmy had a shot to go to the league, and it was a little bit different too with the standards
yeah,
and how you can go. But he to me was really really good. Obviously, you got Eli Riley, Jalen McClinton,
yeah,
Kelvin Hopkins, all those guys were just so good. TT, Jabari Laws, like all my teammates, I love to death. They were awesome. But the ones that I actually went up against on our team, Andre Carter,
mm,
he was and seeing him come into his own, like we knew from a very very early age he was going to be good because he was just so big and so long. And
yeah, yeah,
so it didn't click for him at first, but then like he was one of those guys that put in a ton of work by himself. And the year that he had that phenomenal year, was it my senior year? Yeah,
It
my
might have
my
been. If
senior.
it was his junior
It was
year.
his junior year, yeah. So my
Yeah,
senior year, his junior year, when he goes off, like we all saw that coming, and I would always tell him because we used to be close to lockers. I would be like, dude, once you put it all together, you are going to be so good. And like it's certain things that I shouldn't be able to do to you just because you have so much length with your arms. Like utilize this move better and work on this. And he would do that, and then he would just be completely unstoppable. So him and Nolan Cockrell. Nolan
Mm,
Cockrell is an absolute guy. I mean, still to this day, like when you see him, he still has that same frame. But like back in college, he was just he didn't really talk much. He might not be the most vocal leader, but he showed you by the way that he worked and in the weight room,
yeah.
on the football field, off the football field, the way he took care of his body. He was just a phenomenal example of what it means to be a leader and an Army football player. So those are the two that I would have to put right now that I played with, and then playing against Leo Chenal, the linebacker from Wisconsin. I swear that guy was on steroids when we played him. You get you get the scouting report and you're just like, oh, okay. I think they had him at like 6'2", 250 or something like that. You get on the field. Their field is actually curved. And so Wisconsin was huge, like all across the board.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
when
yeah.
we're out there looking at it, we're like, oh, they're not too big. Like, oh, we'll be fine. And then you run up onto the field and like everybody gets to the middle of the curved field, and then you look and you just keep looking up. You're like, holy smokes, these guys are huge. He had to be like it was almost like he was larger than life. He had to be every bit of 6'4", 260 pounds, but it was pure muscle. Like you could see his abs. They had the Adidas jerseys that fit you really tight. I
Yeah.
saw his abs popping out, every single one of his abs popping out through his jersey. I'm just like, this dude is absolutely yoked. He was a really good football player. And then
You-
Isaiah McGuire, the guy that I had to block all game
mm,
from Missouri. I
Okay.
don't know who he plays for. I think he plays for the Browns. Actually,
Okay.
he was probably the best football player I've ever played against. He was a
Wow.
really really good football player. So those are the ones that when I think of and when people ask me that question, those are the ones that I always say.
Man, real before we get to what you're doing now in your time in the Army after West
Yeah,
Point, to think about where you got to play, right? I mean, yeah, you play at Mikey Stadium, one of the most historic fields. That's where you play your home games. You played at Globe Life Field to play, Air Force. You played in NFL stadiums against Navy, right?
yeah,
Then, you get that chance to play, at West Camp Randall Field. I mean,
that's awesome.
that's, I mean, and I mean, maybe you weren't on the trips, but still playing in the big house, your
Mhm.
teammates got to play sophomore year, playing at Oklahoma, freshman year. Oklahoma was supposed to return the trip in 2020, didn't work out because of COVID, but still, played at Cincinnati, who was a good team back then.
They were
I'm pretty
really
sure
good.
Desmond Ritter was the quarterback back then, right?
Yeah, Sauce Gardner was there, Desmond Ritter. A
Yeah,
fun
I mean,
fact about I think when I think about and they weren't a Power Five school. I mean, it's still not a Power Five school, technically Power Four, whatever you want to call it.
yeah,
When I look at the worst loss that we've taken, I mean, obviously Navy kind of gave it to us. Anytime we played a Power Five school, we only lost by like 7 points or less. It was
yeah,
never like we always competed. That was the only game where Cincinnati flat out lined up and whipped our tails. We didn't even score on offense. They
yeah.
didn't do any blitzing. They didn't do any stunting. They ran a base defense. I think they ran like an under defense, and they just flat out whipped our tails all game. So that's the when people ask me what was the worst loss we took, I think it was a Cincinnati game because they didn't do anything
Wow.
special. They just flat out and out toughed us. That's
Yeah,
simple as that.
I, I think Jabari Moore scored a defensive touchdown in
He
that game on
did.
like some
He
kind
was
of
coming off
fumble.
of he was
Yeah,
coming off of a suspension and he had the game of his life. But like that was the only points that we can score. And it was like I think the game was like a 21-10 game, 21-7 game, but we couldn't
yeah.
move the ball to save our life. They were so good.
Yeah, I mean, I just think about, and now with Army being in a conference, those opportunities are maybe a little less because you're going to play basically one Power Four school a year, right? And
Yeah,
this year they got to go to Kansas State and get a W at Kansas
got a
State,
W.
so that's an experience that Army players that are on the current Army players now are going to remember 4, 5, 6 years down the road, right? And now I think next year they're going to Wake Forest, so not necessarily
Yeah,
super
not the
power.
biggest. Yeah.
Yeah, not the biggest, but I mean, down the road, I think there's more. There might be a game with Missouri down the road. There's still some. You want to. They're gonna. That's the paydays for Army when they can go to the Power Four schools and make the money. When they get over $1 million to beat Kansas State, I think. I think that's
Yeah.
what I remember, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, Pretty cool. So what talk to us a little bit about life after West Point and like your military time and maybe that was like the transition of being like a West Point cadet and Army football player to a second lieutenant.
Yeah, it was awesome. So I ended up obviously commissioned as a second lieutenant. I was an engineer officer, which I loved every minute of it. My major was GIS, and but I had the engineering track of infrastructure engineer. So once I started taking those engineering courses, all of my teachers were engineer officers, and so I saw they had you could be a geospatial engineer, and I loved all of my engineer teachers, and they would just drop small, subtle, excuse me, they would drop small, subtle hints about being an engineer officer, obviously advocating for their branch. And I just, did my research and I completely fell in love with it. And I knew I wanted to be an engineer. And so when branch night came, when you got to put in your preferences, there's multiple ways you can do it, but I think my first six slots were all engineer. It was engineer with a branch detail this, engineer branch detail that, engineer Brad. So it was. I knew I was going to be an engineer, so when I got it, I was ecstatic. And my first assignment was actually at Fort Leonard Wood. So I went to Bolick, did my Bolick at Fort Leonard Wood, and then I ended up staying. There was this whole myth. I won't know if it's a myth, but there was a whole wise man's tale that they would tell you at school that, hey, if you don't like where you post, you can always get it changed once you get to Bolick. And I was like, all right, cool. I got Fort Wainwright, and they had just went from the 25th ID to the 11th Airborne Division. And I was like, well, I want to jump out of plane. So instead of going to Fort Wainwright, I tried to switch to Joint Base Elmendorf Richardson down in Anchorage.
Hmm.
And they were like, well, what you can do is after Bolick, just stay an extra year, become a platoon leader, an executive officer at Fort Leonard Wood with the basic training, and then we'll switch it all for you. And so that was my first actual assignment in the Army, and I absolutely loved it. It was, it might not be the most traditional path, but to be around so many, I guess, young people, but also the same age as me. I saw a lot of myself in them. I mean, you're taking them from being civilians to being full combat engineers, bridge crew members. 12 Bravos is the combat engineer, then 12 Charlie is the bridge crew member. You're taking them from being civilians, and then 20 weeks later, they're running through a sticks lane. They're blowing stuff up. We're doing a whole bunch of stuff with C4s. They're building bridges on water. It's just it was one of the best experiences that I had, and you just see so much transformation in them. Like a lot of kids come in that are maybe overweight or not in shape and can't walk a mile to doing a whole 12-mile ruck probably faster than I could.
Hmm.
It was very awesome to see. And so that was the first thing that I ever did. I ran a ton of ranges. I ran a ton of demo ranges, hand grenade ranges, planned a lot of FTXs. We have this thing called they call it the Nick at Night, but it's the night infiltration course. So you're just basically low crawling while they're shooting machine guns over the cross with tracer rounds at night. It's a really, really cool experience. So I got to do all of that stuff as a second lieutenant, and I really enjoyed it. And then from there, um, the Alaska thing kind of fell through because I kind of got some bad information on that, and my branch manager ended up saying, "Yeah, that's not how that works, but we have something else for you if you want to do that." And so, my major was GIS, and so they had an opening down in San Antonio to be a geospatial engineer, and so I applied for that. 24 hours later, I got it, and next thing I knew, I was going to San Antonio, and it was a really awesome experience down there. When I got there July of last year, um, I was an executive officer for a geospatial planning cell, but I didn't even get to do that job for more than maybe 2 months because they tried to assassinate President Trump. When they tried to do that, they stood up a task force that was going to help all the presidential candidates get to and from where they were going. So they brought down a National Guard general, and there's not a lot of first lieutenants at Fort Sam Houston. So they volunteered me to be be the general's aide, which I jumped at the opportunity to do that.
Hmm.
Me and General Wilkins, we traveled all across the country, and I saw so much cool stuff. Worked with the Secret Service. We went to Mar-a-Lago multiple times. We escorted, at the time, former President Trump. At the time, we escorted him to the airport in his motorcade. It was really, really cool. And I got to see a lot of the world and kind of how the higher ups
Hmm.
work. And it was just being in DC for a lot of stuff. Really, really cool. And then once I got back, again, since I was the only first lieutenant there and I was kind of like the most senior lieutenant there, my company commander was going he's going off to do something. So they volunteered me to be the new commander of that company. And that was
Hmm.
one of the last things that I did before I ended up getting out of the military. But I just did a lot of stuff that I never would have imagined I would have, especially being at such a young rank. It was just a really really cool experience. And they don't, I won't say West Point doesn't prepare you to do all that stuff. They do. But they don't prepare you in the sense that you think. They just teach you how to be adaptable, how to think on the fly, and how to think in high pressure situations. And so you do have the base knowledge, but like, you don't know how to be a platoon leader or an executive officer or a company commander until you do it. And
Yeah.
so I was thankful for West Point because I did have a base foundation of, this is how you be a leader, this is how you organize, this is how you think in stressful situations. And so I think that was the biggest thing that I learned from the academy that helped me transition to being in the actual army.
Yeah, no, that so you like when you graduated West Point, you had like you thought was going to be your path, right? And it went a little bit different than you thought. You were
Mhm.
adapted, but those experiences, man, I mean, you're not getting that anywhere else. I don't
You're
think
not.
you're not
You're
getting those
not.
opportunities being a Navy grad. You're not getting those opportunities being an Air Force grad.
Yep.
And the fact that you jumped on it and you got to see a little bit more than most would at your age, and you got to be within probably spitting distance of now President Trump. I mean,
Yeah.
and it was your job to make sure everything. One of your jobs to make sure everything went right. And that's awesome. I mean, I would like talking before we started this conversation. I had no idea that you would have, that those would have
Yeah.
been
It's
the opportunities. So
crazy. It was a crazy, and all of that stuff happened, in a span of 8 months. So like,
hmm,
once I got done doing that, I hopped to the next thing. And I was like, wow, this is just not something I ever would expect that I would do. So
yeah.
it was crazy.
You know what? It's great to hear, like, when we have these podcasts and we talk to the old grads, the quote old grads, and for like Army football recruits to hear these type of stories and to hear, hey, this could be what happens to you if you go to West Point. You get a pretty darn good education at West Point. You're going to be tested. You get 3 or 4 years there, and here are some opportunities for you. And sometimes we see, grads from the past, they own hockey teams and this and that.
Yeah.
They run SoFi or whatever, and here you are, making sure touring it, the country, making sure our now president is going to be all right, and it's just
Yeah.
like you never know. I know there were a couple. Ray Wright, right, is a guy that comes
Oh,
to
Raymond
mind,
Wright. Yeah, he's an
and when
awesome
it
guy.
was. Yeah, what happened in Afghanistan with the airport and hearing him
Mhm.
and was it JD Moat that was with him? Is
JD
that right?
JD Moat. Yep.
JD Moat are out making, there's some kind of, is there a bombing at an Afghanistan, airport or whatever, and they're in there trying to make sure everybody's safe. You just never know, but to be prepared for it like you were and they were, I mean, it's just incredible. That's what this podcast is all about. Hearing about those stories, hear about your experiences as a player, and yeah, you get through 4 years, and you had a great 4 years of football. But then, like seeing where you went from there and now where you are now, because now there's opportunities for you after. Now you're medically discharged, going to be medically discharged from the Army, and now
Mhm.
you're pursuing something that you're going to become one of me, maybe, Cam. I don't
Yeah.
know. You
Hopefully,
maybe
yeah.
talk to us about that.
Yeah. So when I got down to Fort Sam Houston, obviously my career was plagued with a lot of injuries. Tore my ACL, separated my AC joint, and fractured my clavicle. Had to get that fixed. I fractured my left great toe, Tommy John, multiple
Hmm.
concussions. The things you get from playing football.
Yeah.
And so as I was leaving Fort Leonard Wood, I was training up for like sapper train up and air assault school, all this stuff. And I had just left air assault school, and I was having like this pain in my hip, but I didn't know what it was. I thought it was just from, all the running and rucking and doing all the crazy stuff that you do in the military. So I ignored it, as I'm sure most people would. You take a couple ibuprofen and keep pushing. Well, it got to the point when I got to Fort Sam Houston, anytime I'd be on a run, it was just very awful pain. Felt like somebody was sticking an ice pick in my hip, and I was like, I can't. To the point where I would run, and I was like, I can't run anymore. I need to figure this out. So I went to the hospital. Well, I went to the doctor, and the military has these different steps that you got to take just to be able to get to where you really want to be. So
Yeah.
went to the doctor and they were like, okay, yeah, we'll do an x-ray on you. And then you get submitted for PT, physical therapy. And so I went from getting my x-ray to just seeing like this bony overgrowth on my femoral head, and I don't have a lot of cartilage in my hip. And then they found something else, which I needed an MRI for. And then from the MRI, I got a CT scan. So in the CT scan, they saw it was like this little, it was like this size black hole on my femur.
Hmm.
And so I actually ended up having a what is called an osteoidosteoma, which is a bone tumor. And I was like, what? Like, that is, what are we talking about? I was like, yeah, like we don't think it'll be cancerous. We'll figure out when we do, I think it's a biopsy or whatever. And so I found that out from July to November is the whole process when I found out that I had the tumor. And so from there, they're like, yeah, we'll take it out, but just want to let you know, like, you don't have any cartilage in your hips are bad, and you just had, you got a tumor in your femur, and this is going to be your third surgery. So they kind of told me, they're like, yeah, buddy, you're probably not going to be able to stay in after this. I was like, yeah, we'll see. So I tried to put it off as long as I could. And it wasn't until after the surgery that a doctor came in and she was basically like, yeah, you need to look at something different. Like, you're too young to be having all these problems.
Hmm.
And so when they told me that, that's when I came to the realization. I was like, okay, well, if I have to find something else, if I'm going to be getting out of the military, what do I really want to do with my life? Like, if money didn't matter, what would I do? And even from a kid, everybody has the dreams of, if you play a sport, everyone has the dreams of playing professionally. For me, I had those dreams, but I always knew Cam wants to play college football and Cam wants to be a sports analyst. That's always been my goal. And so even when I was in West Point, when I thought about, if I would do 20 years or if I was do the five and fly, like, what would my steps be to, like, what would I do after? And I always knew it would be being a sports journalist, sports analyst. And so when this opportunity came, I was like, well, this is the Lord telling me I need to jump on this now while I still can. And so I did my research, reached out to some schools, did some interviews just to kind of see the process. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to grad school, go to school, get my master's in sports journalism. And so at the time, it was Miami, Northwestern, and Arizona State were on my list. Well, I ended up going to the BYU and Colorado bowl game in San Antonio because I live right across the street, obviously, for Sam Houston. And so at the end of that game, I ended up talking to this reporter. Her name was Brady. Her name is Brady King. And when I asked her, I was like, okay, this is my situation. This is what I'm thinking about doing. How did you get to where you are? Like, where'd you go to school? Sure enough. So, oh, I went to the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communications at Arizona State. And I
Hmm.
was like, well, that was already top three on my list. That just immediately got bumped to number one. And so I did another Zoom interview with the guy from Arizona State, and he just sold me on the program. And from there, I applied, got in, and then I was just waiting for the Army to do their process for me to be able to get here. And so it took a while. I think I started my process, my medical board in March of this year, and I actually ended up getting put on terminal leave August 15th, three
Hmm.
days before orientation. So as soon as I got in typical Army fashion, right? I
Yeah.
was sweating bullets the entire time. I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make it, but typical Army fashion, I got everything that I needed to get done on the 15th of August. I had my apartment packed up. I already had my stuff, set up here in Phoenix. I just need to get here. So packed up my apartment, got my stuff, said my last goodbyes, hopped in the U-Haul that night, drove to El Paso to stay with Jabari Laws actually. And
Wow.
then the next morning I woke up and I drove down to I got here to Phoenix, moved in, had to get settled as quick as I can. And then a day later, I think Tuesday, I was starting my grad program orientation for grad school. And that's what I've been doing now. So now I obviously I'm just in grad school, but I do a whole bunch of different stuff. I make content, I do content creation on the side, my little Cam's crystal ball, do my little sports analytic thing, and then I beat write for some high schools around here, and then just whatever the semester takes me, I'm building and learning my different skills to get to where I want to be with sports journalism.
That's cool. Where do you see yourself? You see yourself as like on the like the digital side, or do you where you where you see for yourself in the future?
So, when you if you were to ask me this question, before I started, I would say, well, I mean, the answer's still the same, but my answer kind of has gotten diluted because you get into the world and you see so many different sides of it. There's a lot of cool stuff. But ultimately, if I could snap my fingers when I graduate and get a phone call for a dream job, I want to be a sports analyst on ESPN College Game Day and then a color commentator for games.
Hmm.
But as I'm in the program now, I've never been a big writer, but I'm actually pretty decent at writing
Hmm.
sports stories, game stories, feature stories.
Yeah.
So I actually enjoy beat writing. I wouldn't mind being a beat writer for a team. I wouldn't mind being a sideline reporter for a team. But wherever the opportunity takes me, when you get into this business, especially if you want to be on air, it's it's I call it being very unrealistically realistic. They're
Hmm.
very lofty goals that you want to
Yeah.
do and places that you want to be. And when you sit here and look at TV, like I personally believe that I can do exactly what they do. And I think I'm not to toot my own horn, but I feel like I'm better than some of the people that are on TV. However, you have to make your way up through the ranks. Like some of these
Yeah.
guys, especially with the transition of former athletes getting on air and doing that, it
Mm.
makes it a little bit harder for guys that, like us that, might have a journalism degree or might really want to do it and get to those levels, but might not have played football or might not have played at that level. So kind
Yeah.
of sucks in that aspect, but it's just those are the breaks and those are the ropes that you have to take. So, for me, I might have to go be at a smaller market. I might have to go be a news channel anchor, even though I don't really want to do the news that much, but just getting those skills to learn how to work a camera, learn how to take photos, learn how to write, learn how to produce, learn how to write scripts. That's all the stuff that I'm learning in school right now, which I didn't even know that was a part of any of this stuff. It's
Yeah.
mind-boggling to me. So,
It's so
wherever
much.
wherever
It's
the
so
road
much, dude.
takes me, yeah, it is. But I absolutely love it. I wake up every day and I'm excited to go to school. I'm excited to get to class and learn these different skills. So wherever it takes me, as long as I can end up where I want to be,
Yeah.
maybe it's not ESPN College Game Day, maybe it's somewhere on Sports Center, maybe it's Fox Sports, maybe it's CBS Sports. Who knows?
Yeah.
Um, I'm just gonna work my hardest every day, learn the skills that I can, and just try and put my best foot forward. And you never know what happens.
Yeah, I just think that in just being involved in the kind of the media, I guess, you have no regrets,
Yeah,
because like I had an opportunity, like an ESPN opportunity as a researcher early in my reporting days. And you know what? I think about it and I'm like, it wasn't full time, it was part time. I'm like, I wasn't really ready to make the jump. They want me to basically pack up my life and move on. I wasn't really doing that for full time. And there's times where I regret it, but then I would never be here where I am right now. I would never have
exactly.
gotten the opportunity to cover Army football like I did when I was at a newspaper. I wouldn't be able to take a buyout at that newspaper and start my own Black Knight Nation website and podcast and and still cover the team. That means a lot. That's what I think with Army for me. It means a lot to a lot of people. Army football team. It's not you don't it's just different. It's a unique experience and something that I'll always have with me. Yeah, yes, I could have been a researcher at ESPN. Whoa, I would be. I'd rather be talking to guys like you, Cam, and talking to guys about your experiences and doing this podcast and going to games and reporting. And there's a lot more writing I could be doing for Army football right now. I'm
Yeah.
starting to get some clear. But I mean, we talked about this before, but just talking to you and knowing what you like to pursue. Like I said, the door is open. If you want to be on our post game podcast and give us your
100%.
analysis for games like next week against the big Air Force, this week big Air Force game, fine. If you have an idea that you want to write that pertaining to Army and you can give your perspective on it, by all means, just shoot me an email, let me know anything I can do to help you, because I think it's pretty cool that a former member of the mob wants to pursue a career in the media and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
That'd be
It's
awesome.
not,
Like
and
when I
then
think about it, I've always think to myself, I say, you know what, it'd be so cool one day if, I could call an Army Navy game. It's like, oh yeah,
mm,
former Army football player. Obviously, I'm trying, you can't be biased, but I I'd be a little bit
Yeah.
biased in the calling, but it's like, yeah, man, I played here. It's my alma mater. I played football here, and now I'm calling the Army Navy game. I think that'd be a full circle moment. That'd be super awesome. Or sitting there on college game day, if Coach Monken is still here, I know there's always talks of where he's going to go for different stuff,
Yeah.
but sitting on stage and talking to your former coach, like, yeah, coach, what do you think about the game? And it's like, well, I think that's so awesome, and it'd be a great opportunity.
I hope one day Black Knight Nation could get to that level where we could have some kind of platform with that. We're trying, we're keeping it going. And I just think that would be, honestly, I think the player's perspective from an Army football radio is, and even the football broadcast would be great.
Yeah, I think it
Keenan
would.
Reynolds, Keenan Reynolds does it for Navy. Keenan Reynolds does a great job. I've listened to a couple of the radio broadcasts. The Navy crew does a great job, and Keenan Reynolds does a great job with it. I mean, it's something that's missing, in my opinion, to be honest with
Yeah.
you. It's something that's missing, in my opinion, that perspective. You've been through the stuff. You've been through a lot of the stuff that these players are going through right now. You can give the perspective of the offensive line. You can give the perspective of getting through beast. You can give the perspective of having some tough times at West Point and making it through. I think that
100%.
that definitely would bring a lot. And I really appreciate your time tonight.
Of course.
Telling us your story and just giving us all, your perspective on your time at West Point, life after West Point, what's going on in these CIC games, and like what will be going on Saturday at Colorado Springs when Army plays Air Force in their first leg of the Commander-in-Chief's Trophy, and the jawing back and forth possibly, and
Yeah,
let's let's
1,000%.
let's see what Army can do there. But thanks so much, Cam. Thanks for your time, and we'll definitely would like to have you back if you'd like to, and be great to, like I said, get your perspective. And thanks so much for coming on tonight.
Of course, thank you for the opportunity. It's always a pleasure to be able to share my experience and my journey. And I hope it's some young guys that really aspire to come in and play Army football and take us to heights we've never been before. Hope they're seeing this and it makes them want to fully commit even more. So Sal, I appreciate it. You do an awesome job. Always have been. I think you're probably one of the first people that I saw actually interact with me when I was going through the recruiting process a long time ago, which feels like ages ago, but you do a phenomenal job and I'm so thankful for the opportunity. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's what it's all about. I appreciate that's what it's all about. Guys, check out our YouTube for more interviews like this. Subscribe, give us a like, check our Instagram out. Our Instagram's going to be popping for Air Force Week. We're going to have coverage of Air Force Week coming up. And thanks for spending some time with us on the Black Knight Nation podcast. We'll see you soon.